Hey, what's up, Raider Nation? Well, the Raiders took an L, but in hindsight, they're in line to land the #1 overall pick. We're going to break it all down, everything we saw against the Giants, plus more on Maxx Crosby. So keep it locked here, and we'll go live straight to Q Studios.
Hey, what's up, man?
What's up, Q?
What's happening? What's happening?
Q knows ball, and as we're going to be talking about it today, I'm not on the fence. I'm actually on the fence about how we really want to treat this future #1 pick if we so end with it. We'll talk about it next.
No doubt, no doubt. And Michael Mayer, welcome to the party. We knew he could do it. He showed it on yesterday, even though it resulted in an L. Nice to see Big Mike get involved. We'll talk about that plus more on the Raider Squad Show. Let's get it.
Raider Nation, it's time. This is the Raiders Squad. Everything Las Vegas Raiders every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from the Death Star in the desert. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Commitment to excellence starts here. The Raiders Squad Show starts now.
Hey, what's up, Raider Nation? Remember, if you like the content, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. You can also follow us on our social media channels. You'll see in the description below, or if you're watching this on YouTube, the ways that you can connect with us. Also, we just want to thank you so much for making Locked On Raiders or the Squad Show your first and second listen of the day. And remember, the Locked On Network is the #1 sports podcasting network. So we do appreciate you helping grow the channel and also grow the network, and obviously rocking with us, despite the fact that the Raiders have only had a 2-win season. But also keep in mind that we're on the audio side. So wherever you find your shows and podcasts, we're there too. So give us a 5-star, leave a rate and review, because that helps the channel grow as well. And lots to get into in this episode. In the final and fourth segment, we're going straight to Q Studios, and Q and Linc are going to be answering some of your questions and comments. So get that into the chat right now if you're watching this on YouTube. I always say this, if you're listening to this later, you can always hit us up and we might get some of your questions and comments in another episode. So keep that in mind as well. We're also going to be talking a little bit about Maxx Crosby, because we know that he shut down for the rest of the season. Not too happy with that decision. So we're going to break that all down. But first, we got to get into everything that we saw with the Raiders and Giants. The Raiders got smacked again, 34-10. And this was another blowout. But in hindsight, a lot of Raider fans did not want the Raiders to win this one. I'm not going to lie. I was one of them, because that #1 overall pick was in line. But I'm not going to sit here and lie. Even the Raiders losing, I was still upset on Sunday because of how they lost. But nonetheless, first I want to say Q, the Tupac background, like the record, the platinum record.
Yes.
That's great. I just saw that right now. I thought that's a new addition for you.
Yes.
On the wall.
Absolutely.
It looks great. So Q Studios, just always making everything look good. But nonetheless, the Raiders lose to the Giants, and we'll go to you first, Q. What were your thoughts on just how they lost and how they looked on Sunday? What were your takeaways?
It was gross. I mean, to be honest, it was really gross. I was sitting in the press box, and I didn't know what to expect in the game. You have no Maxx Crosby. You have no Brock Bowers. Just didn't know what the motivation was going to be, what the leadership was going to look like. And this is coming off the heels of a game that they played really competitively against the Texans. So I thought going into the game, and this is before we knew that Maxx was going to be shut down, if they play like they play against Houston, they're going to beat the Giants. I just straight up thought that they were going to be better than that. And just the way that they came out and the way that it really started slow, both teams just kind of back and forth punting the ball. And then also Geno has a little success until he doesn't, right? And then there's the interception that I thought was an easy pick six that turned into be something difficult. And I was just like, what is going on with this game? The whole game felt weird. And then the Giants just, put the vice grips on the Raiders, and the Raiders defenders, there was green grass in front of them the whole time. I kept looking up and looking at the clock saying, man, how long is this game taking? And once the Giants scored 14 points, I knew it was over, because, the Raiders don't score usually more than 14 points. So I thought it's a wrap, but it just looked really bad. It was a real bad performance by a team that's not a very good team, as they only have 2 wins. But I thought it was going to look a lot better than what they did on Sunday.
I walked into the game with really mixed expectations. As a former player, I never want to see a team that I, have personal interest in lose, and especially one that I'm as passionate about as this organization here. But also, looking for the future, it's almost like it was almost necessary. So I had mixed emotions. But I tell you what, the true sign for me was the very first offensive play that lost 3 yards.
Yeah.
When I saw that, I was like, okay, It's in the books, because the Raiders to me have a hard time rebounding from that. And though there were times they looked competitive against the Giants, there were so many times where the Giants just looked like they were 10 steps ahead of the Raiders. I mean, wide open receivers in the secondary, not being able to get the run game really established, not being able to get sustained drives as we've known them to be throughout this season. That was nothing new. But, not really knowing what to expect and how they were going to play and seeing if they were going to play flat. I thought a lot of times the energy was there. It's just going back to the precipice the thought that they're not very good.
Right.
It's not a very good team. And now how do you gauge that with another not very good team? Because I did not have, as Q mentioned, a high expectations of the Giants. It wasn't like we were going to see the lights out offense.
Right.
But the Raiders made the Giants look really good. And that was troubling to me. It really was. This game made the Giants look good, and the fact that the lead just kept growing and growing, I'm like, oh my goodness. But obviously, the big killer was a kickoff return for a touchdown. When you have something that seems so positive as you drive down, you go with, I think it was 65 yards or 15 plays, or something like that.
A nice long drive.
Yeah, a nice long drive, and you get a touchdown. I'm like, okay, that's positive, much like we were looking in the Texans game. But then all of a sudden, kickoff return, boom. It just kills you. So along with that and the interceptions, it was just hard. It was a really long day, as you know, Shantelle.
And on top of that, I'll just say on that kick return touchdown, all it did is pain me a little bit more to realize that the Raiders haven't had one of those.
Right.
Yes.
The Giants had one in the game. The Raiders haven't had one since 2010.
Wow.
December 26, 2010. So just about a little bit over 15 years ago was their last kickoff return touchdown. Shout out to Jacoby Ford. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, it's been a minute. And I was talking to Q earlier before we hopped on air, and I was just saying the Raiders look like the worst team in the league. They look like the worst team on Sunday. And despite the fact of Maxx not being there, Brock Bowers not being on the field, all that played into how terrible they looked. But I think if you look at the season as a whole, there are some positives, right? Because Michael Mayer did look really great. And I think this is something that we wanted to see from Michael Mayer, and we saw it in this game. And it just made me think Michael Mayer could be a big piece for the Raiders next year. What were your thoughts on his performance, Linc?
I wasn't surprised. I thought this was an opportunity, and I looked for it when we talked last week. I thought Michael Mayer should have a big game without Brock Bowers. As I've said all year, there's only one football. And when you have the rookie of the year and Brock Bowers out there in the football field, chances are you're going to try to get the football to him 9 times out of 10. And you also have to keep in mind, this team has not had a whole lot of offensive plays, especially during the game. So throughout the year, combination. So when you're trying to get the ball to Ashton Jeanty, you're trying to get the ball to Brock Bowers, you're trying to find a way to create some balance and harmony and consistency in your offensive play calling and other player makers. It wasn't a surprise to me, guys.
No, it wasn't a surprise to me either. I was just so happy to see it.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the Michael Mayer that we've talked about since he was drafted in the second round. I mean, this dude at one time, and I know a lot of people don't remember, was the baddest tight end in college.
True story.
I mean, he was the guy. And when the Raiders got him in the second round, I was like, all right, that's a really good pickup right there. There is a world where him and Brock could coexist and they could play at a really high level together. No, like Lincoln said, there's only one ball, so you can't, you're not going to just give him 9-10 targets like you did on Sunday. But at the same time, he could be effective. And what got me was like, it's taken almost 3 complete seasons to see that performance. That's something that I think that the Raiders as a organization did him a disservice. I think that they could have been trying to get him more involved. And I know he had the time in year 2 where he stepped away from the team. So that's obviously he's not going to go out there and play then. But this guy can go out there and perform. I do believe that there's a world that you see Michael Mayer and Brock Bowers next year together as teammates and playing at a high level. I know a lot of people talk about trading Big Mike, but I think there's a world where he sticks around.
I mean, I certainly hope they keep him. Be honest with you. When I look at the league and I look at places like the Rams and Buffalo, and I see teams that are able to run multiple tight end sets offensively well and have everybody contribute. Then you see a game like last night between the Bears and the 49ers. You see how big their tight ends come in. And all you're looking at is George Kittle sitting on the sideline for the 49ers, but his backup comes in big for the 49ers. There is a realm of possibility in offensive world for both to coexist and to do it well. You just have to figure out a strategy in which to do it. But more importantly, you have to figure out an offensive system that keeps you on the football field.
Right.
You can't do it with 4 or 5 plays here, 6 plays here, expecting to have someone a big cutoff. But I was certainly, impressed by Michael Mayer. The very first series, he came this close to getting the first down. And when his elbow went down, I'm like, oh my gosh, what a great effort out of Big Hit Double M. But the fact is he came in just a half a yard short. We got to punt the ball, here we go again with a lack of offense.
Yeah, Michael Mayer, 9 receptions for 89 yards. He balled out. And it's funny because that was the next question I was going to ask you guys. That's why it's so easy to produce this show, was would you trade Michael Mayer after his performance? And I only say that, and both of you have said, let's keep him. You guys have both said that because you both see a world where him and Brock Bowers could really just be a dynamic duo on this team. And we talk about 12 personnel, 13 personnel. The Rams love to run it. We've seen it. But the other question is that the Raiders, after this game, you can also just see how many decisions are going to be made in the offseason, because there's going to have to be a lot of decisions made. And there was a lot of interest in Michael Mayer before the season, right? There was people talking about how he could possibly be on the trade block. He puts up a performance like this. And remember, a lot of guys are also playing for jobs at this time of year, right? We talk about wins, but when you're, a team that only has 2 wins in the season, you're playing for not only trying to get a job for possibly the Raiders, but other teams in the league. So with that being said, you guys have both said the Raiders should keep Michael Mayer, but do you see a world where they could kind of offer him up to another team just because of the value they could get back, especially after that performance, Q?
Yeah, I mean, I think that every conversation is a valid conversation, right? And I'm sure that the powers that be, the front office, will keep their options open. And if somebody comes with a big price for Big Mike, I could see them making a move. But like I said, I do think that there's a world where they both could coexist and play at a high level together and be a part of a really good offense. They just got to fit the right pieces around them. They've got to get the right play caller. They've obviously got to get the right quarterback. There's a lot that they've got to do to put together. But yeah, I mean, in this offseason for the Raiders in general, they have to have all their options open. John Spytek and company have to field every single call that they get and figure out they've got to get the right pieces in place. They've got to turn this around. I mean, me and Linc are at Allegiant Stadium yesterday and seeing Raider Nation, the faithful, coming in there and, still supporting the team, even though they've only won 2 games. And all they're asking for is, can we just get this thing turned around? And the Raiders owe that. They owe that to themselves. They owe that to their fan base. They owe that to the National Football League to stop being, the butt of jokes, or hey, next year it's going to happen, or this is going to, man, you got to get this right. You've got to figure it out. So you've got to go to the table with everything you've got, figure out how you're going to get this thing turned around moving forward, because enough is enough.
It's obvious that, with the Raiders possibly having the first pick in the draft, that you can obviously address a severe need with that. And of course, even if you have the wherewithal to where you want to trade back and get multiple picks, multiple first rounds, and maybe a second round over the next couple of years, I understand that you need more than one player to get over the hump. But my thing has always been, you've got to stop giving away your stars. Michael Mayer is the best blocking tight end that we have on this roster, run blocking tight end that we have on this roster right now. And the fact is that you can't overlook that. Forget the pass catching ability, but when you want to try to run the ball with astringenti, you got to be able to secure the edges. That's why your blocking tight ends are so important. And tight end blocks being able to secure the edge, no matter how you do the blocking system, is so important. So stop giving away your stars. Plus, this is what's happened to the Raiders over the last 4 or 5 years. They've given away all their stars who went on to be stars elsewhere. Stop doing that. You have to build. So there's a lot of decisions to be made, Shantelle. You're absolutely right. There's a lot of decisions to be made, and there's going to be some hard choices that are going to be made. First and foremost, we got to figure out who's in charge, who's making the decisions. And then we got to have it sort of fall downhill and what they want to do with that first pick in the first round. But there are plenty of issues to address. It just always stumps me when I think in the back of my mind, why, if you have so much money, free agent money, you're not spending it to address this team in a way to where you get this team better. You've got a lot of guys who are on 1 year, 2 year prove-it contracts. They're going to have decisions to make for themselves as well as you negotiating. And there's no doubt in my mind that you're going to have to address this in the free agency, address this offensive line. And you're going to spend for at least 2 guys, overspend. Overspend for at least 2 guys because you need it. And that sort of drastic measures, I hate to see this organization find itself in time and time again. So we've got to figure out how all this stuff is going to sort of sort itself out before they become somewhat competitive. But yesterday was an embarrassment.
Yeah, it was. And look, the Raiders have plenty of salary cap space. They didn't spend too much. When John Spytek and Pete Carroll took over, they just brought in a couple guys here, to fill a couple holes, but they didn't go out and do any big time money spending. They spent most money on Geno Smith after they traded for him and extended him. That was really the root of all the money they spent. Obviously, Maxx Crosby and Colton Miller, a couple of the homegrown guys. I get that, but outside the building, they didn't really do much. This year, that can't be an option. That cannot be an option. They've got to go out there and they've got to address it. I'm not saying just build your whole team through free agency because that doesn't work, right. But I wouldn't have a problem with them going out and getting the highest price center out there. I wouldn't care if they went and got another offensive lineman. It has to be started in the trenches. That offensive line, go out and do your due diligence, spend a lot of money on these guys, get them in place, and then continue to build around the draft. The one thing I can say about the guys, and I know there hasn't been a lot of production from the guys that they had in this draft this year, I do believe those guys are all part of the solution. I just seeing them around the building, hearing them and the way that they have a positive attitude. And this is kind of you can go back to see what Tampa Bay has done for so many years, because this is where John Spytek comes from. The guys that they draft and the guys that they have in their building are guys that love football. They're really good dudes. I mean, really good dudes. Like, they've got it between their ears, and they're going to go out there and put their best foot forward. And most of them are ready to play at a pretty early stage. And I know that we haven't seen a lot of production from these guys early on this year, but I think that these guys are really going to show something starting in next season. So I think that these are some really good building blocks that they have from this draft. We just haven't seen a ton of it from multiple guys yet.
Yeah, and speaking of the draft, the Raiders right now are sitting in that number one spot to land that potential number one overall pick. I believe if they win against the Kansas City Chiefs, the worst they can do is, and I'm going to find this out, is either second or third. That's the worst that they can pick.
Three. I'm not 100% sure. I'm trying to confirm that, but I think it's three. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the worst they could do. So they could, let's just say that it is 3. We will confirm it later, but that's the worst they could do. And behind them is the Giants, and then behind them is the Jets. And I think that's the most interesting 3, because here's the thing. Coming into the game, there were like rumors where they were like, oh, the Giants might not stick with Jackson Dart, and they might want to draft a quarterback as well. They might be interested in Fernando Mendoza, right? And then Jackson Dart came out against the Raiders and was like, hey, I'm that dude. Right? Mm-hmm. Like, he was like, I'm that dude. But the Jets, they're also looking for a quarterback. So if the Raiders really do believe, and I think a lot of people are saying that Fernando Mendoza is going to be the number one overall pick. If the Raiders do believe he is that guy, and they don't get that number one overall pick, they get the second pick. And let's say, the Giants end up getting that number one overall pick. They have a lot of power to move it, right? They might give it to the Jets, and because the Jets might really believe that Mendoza is that guy. But the Raiders in a really good position, and they might be in a very big position of power as well. I was going to save this for later in the show, but we might as well get to it now. Here's the thing. If you don't believe that Mendoza, and we don't even know if Dante Moore is going to actually enter the draft. He hasn't actually said he's going to enter the 2026 draft. But if you don't believe that Mendoza or Dante Moore is that guy, and a lot of people do, then you could go a whole different other way in the draft. I know a lot of people are thinking quarterback, but the Raiders might not actually do that. And that's kind of my biggest fear is what if the Raiders mess this up, right? Because it has happened before to other teams. And so that's kind of the power of having the number one overall pick, because you don't actually know what they're going to do, right? So we'll go with you first, Q. Just your thoughts on the Raiders potentially landing the number one overall pick and the power that comes with that.
Yeah, no, it is. And I'm glad you said that. I mean, it's you have control of the draft, right? I mean, everyone goes as you go. And it's like in basketball, when you catch the ball and you don't dribble, you have all these different options, right? You can shoot, you can dribble, you can do what you got to do, right? There's different things you could do. Well, having the number one overall pick gives you that. I've said it from the jump, and I know a lot of people don't want to hear it, that if that quarterback is not there that they actually like and believe in, don't just grab a quarterback just because you know that you need to grab a quarterback. I think that would be dumb. If you feel strongly about the guy, by all means, go get him. If you're Team Mendoza, go get him. If you're Team Moore, go get him. Whatever the case may be, that's fine. But if you don't fully believe in him, and I believe the Tennessee Titans made this mistake. They went and got Cam Ward last year, and I don't believe that everyone in that building is on the same page with Cam Ward. I think that they're kind of like looking at him like, And you mentioned Jackson Dart, and if the Giants would have, gone ahead and gotten a quarterback and traded Jackson Dart, well, you don't know, because we don't know who their coach is going to be. So whoever their new coach coming in could have said, that's not really what I want to build my team around. So there might have been a scenario where they traded him. I don't think so. I think he is the guy, but we saw Cliff Kingsbury do that in Arizona, right? They drafted Josh Rosen the very next year. What did they do? They turned around and they traded him and drafted Kyler Murray because that's what Cliff Kingsbury wanted. When you have coaching turnover, that's how things could happen, right? That's not my guy. I didn't draft him. I would have never gone in that direction. And that's all you got to say. And boom, you're moving on from him. So that's why the Giants, they felt like they were in that position. Plus, if they float that out there, a team like the Jets, a team like the Raiders, a team that might need a quarterback, all of a sudden is thinking, oh, dang, they're going to take our guy. We better trade up. Now, all of a sudden, you got the trade rumors going, right? So there's so many different scenarios. But think about what the Bears did. Think about what the Bears did when they had the number 1 overall pick. They didn't draft a quarterback, right? Everyone's like, yeah, they did. They got Caleb Williams. No, they didn't. They traded him. They traded that number 1 pick to Carolina, got a boatload of picks, and then got Carolina's number 1 pick that just happened to be the number 1 pick the next year, and that's how they got Caleb Williams. So there's a lot of different ways to get it done, and clearly the Bears have gotten it done. You see what they're doing. You saw the game that Sunday Night Football, the way that they gave the 49ers everything that they could handle and then some. That was a hell of a game. So you can do these different things. You have a bunch of different options. It doesn't mean that just because you get the number 1 overall pick, oh, Mendoza's a Raider automatically. You got to play this thing out and see what fits your organization the best.
I really hope that calmer heads prevail here, because the thing is, you can't panic. You got to draft according to what your philosophy is, and I'm not sure what Spytek's philosophy is. Whether it's draft the best available on his board or the draft the most apparent need, I'm not sure. We're going to find that out. But what I've seen so far is that if they waited so long to play their draft choices, I question the decision making and what's going on and who's scouting and where they're putting their price picks. Now, because you have such a premium pick with that possible number 1 or number 2 pick, you understand this. The Jets gave away a lot of their possible future to get those picks, to compile these next few years, their first round picks and where they're at. And so they want a quarterback. They want a quarterback. Much to Q and your point, Shantelle, is that if Mendoza is not your guy, don't be set on him. It's not like a Caleb Williams. Chicago got Caleb Williams and they took a year of lumps before they addressed their offensive line. They drafted receivers. They drafted a whole arsenal. Then they addressed their offensive line. Now they were playing for a division title last night against the 49ers and they're still in the playoffs. So that's a successful story. But no one ever wants to look at the steps it took, the hard steps it took to get to that point. The Raiders have been down for some time. Possibly, and we don't know this, might be another coaching change. What does that entail? Does that entail a new general manager? Does that entail what happens with that? And who makes the decisions on the future of this organization and the players they need? They need more than one player. And you can point out in many times throughout NFL history, guys that weren't drafted in the top round, top pick, and what they turned out to be. Patrick Mahomes fell out of the top 10, right? You got Tom Brady, you got the list goes on. Joe Montana. I can go back and forth to many guys that I've heard about, quarterbacks that weren't drafted with number 1 pick. There have been, in my lifetime, I have seen very few number 1s overall that have worked out. When you take a quarterback, very few of them. Number 1s overall, and it's a hard field to accomplish. Obviously, to step up to the next level. And I am a firm believer you cannot develop college guys on this level. If they can't come in and play, I don't care if they stay in college for 6-7 years due to NIL and the current standards. If they can't come in and play, you're not going to win to having a guy sit on the sideline holding a clipboard. Right. He's got to go out there. He's going to take his lumps. And sometimes they don't last because you made poor decisions in the offensive line or the offensive strategy, or the coach is no longer there and the philosophy changes. There are all sorts of intangibles that come into mind. So once we decide who's making the decisions, what's in charge, you allow their scouting department to do their due diligence. And Raider Nation, you got to be patient with this process. It is not, even though you have the number 1 pick, it is not that's all we need. Right. Now we're over the top. Right. So far to go.
Yeah, and you guys both make some really good points. And I just want to also mention that you're right in the fact that, and I'm probably going to make a board because when we go into the off season, we're going to have a bunch of draft shows, free agency shows. But Linc is actually right. Like, yeah, we're going to do that. I've been waiting for this, you guys. I've been waiting since week 2, right? But Linc said something really important, that there's not a lot of guys that have been taken number 1 overall that have been quarterbacks that have had the success like a Patrick Mahomes or a Tom Brady. They weren't number 1 overall picks. So it'll be interesting to kind of go through that list when I have a lot of time to produce the show, and we'll have those draft shows. But also, you talk about a quarterback being ready, and they are saying that Fernando Mendoza is the most ready quarterback, but statistically, him and Dante Moore, if you actually look at the stats, it's not very different. And there's a few differences between them, but Dante Moore's got that deep ball. Fernando Mendoza doesn't. So some of their attributes are a little bit different. But if you don't really, I don't think there's a clear-cut generational talent quarterback in this draft. So with that being said, and we don't know who's going to make the decisions. Another point you guys both brought up. Also, we don't know who the coach is going to be. We don't know if the Raiders are going to stick with Pete. Usually the coach wants to grow with that quarterback if they draft a quarterback. So my question to you is, and this is a hypothetical question, if the draft were today and you knew that, and say Dante Moore did announce that he was going to be in the draft and he would make himself eligible, and you had a choice with the number 1 overall pick, would you go with a quarterback, or would you go, I think the Raiders should also look for their tackle. I think getting a tackle is the most important thing, to be honest with you. But Q, what would you do? Like if you had a choice right now, would you go with that number 1 overall pick, and would you think you'd be drafting a quarterback?
Yeah, I think so. I think that as long as I'm comfortable with one of those 2 quarterbacks being my guy, then I'd be foolish not to go get him, right? If I had questions about him, and I like both quarterbacks, to be honest with you. Dante Moore, I think his ceiling is higher, as you mentioned. A lot of people talked about Mendoza's ready to play right now, and I say ready to play right now. That's nobody's ready to play right now, but he's closer than Dante Moore. Dante's only 20 years old, but I do think his ceiling is higher than Mendoza. So I'd probably lean in that direction and have my bridge guy like Aidan O'Connell or someone else be my bridge quarterback until I feel comfortable to put him out there and play right away and get some of those lumps that he's going to get early on. But that's right now. There's so many different ways and options that you can go. And I would have no problem if the Raiders decided that they wanted to go with the tackle either, especially if they were able to trade back and collect a couple more extra picks. Like, that's where the strategy comes involved, because there's going to be a lot of quarterbacks in 2027. And I hate saying that, because going into the draft last year, everyone said, man, if you need a quarterback, 2026 is the draft for you. And now we're like, hey, man, if you need a quarterback, 2027 is the draft for you. It's like, all right, next year we're going to be like, well, this didn't really work out the way we thought it was. So it feels like we keep kicking the can down the road. At some point, you've got to find a way to go get your quarterback. So one of those 2 guys, I think, would most likely be the pick of the Raiders. But again, that's my conversation at the end of December.
Hypothetically speaking, if Dante Moore made himself eligible for the draft and I'm the Raiders sitting at the number 1 position, I traded with the Jets. I fall back because I trust the Giants are going to take a quarterback. So
the Giants or the Jets?
I'm sorry. I traded with the Jets because I know the Jets need a quarterback.
Gotcha. There you go.
So I take their first round. And I ask for a second. So I want to get 2 first rounds and a second for my first pick in the draft. If I'm in the King call chair, King general manager chair, that's what I want to do, because I'm sure, hypothetically speaking, if the order stays as it is, I'm really sure the Giants are going to take a quarterback. The Jets will. So you want your guy? Well, I'm taking all bidders.
Yeah.
Jets know that they've got the most to deal with, the possible, the collateral to give you with out of any other teams. But there are other teams that are looking for quarterbacks out there too. Mm-hmm. So, you have that value. That's where I think the value in the pick comes in. And then I would trade back and that's, of course, if Dante Moore is coming out. If they stay at the first pick and Dante Moore is not coming out, I still trade back the first pick, because I still think that there's a chance, depending on your scouting department, that either you can find a late round quarterback or someone in the who's dropped, not in the top pick, not all the glamour glitz guys, but someone who you might be able to take and may possibly make fit your system, depending on what your system is. But I do this, and I do that because of this, guys. They need more than 1 player.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
I need to address it more than 1 time. If I can get a couple of first round picks, say if I can get 2 first round picks, and I could draft a quarterback or an offensive lineman, it doesn't have to be in the top 10. We've already said that. Jackson Dart wasn't even dropped in the top 10. So, depending on the system and how the player is and how they come in and take it and what you have around them. But because there are so many holes on this team, I would address as many needs as I possibly can with the power of having that number 1 overall pick.
You need a lot of blue chip players.
Absolutely.
That's what this team needs. They need blue chip on the offensive line, defensive line, secondary, linebacking room. I mean, they need a quarterback, obviously, right? I mean, they need blue chip players, wide receiver, right? They need a number 1 wide receiver to go along with their number 1 tight end and Brock Bowers. Like they need a lot on this team. So Link's not wrong. They need so much that if you're able to trade back a couple picks, get multiple picks out of that, especially if Dante Moore, like this, I think that's the biggest key. If Dante Moore says that he's coming out and you have 2 quarterbacks to kind of pin against each other, then you're in a really good position, right? Because you can make it sound like you're big on and more, whatever. One of the two ways. There's a lot of different conversations that can be had out there where you can get other teams to bite, trade up, and then your guy is still there. So like Linc said, if you trade back to number 3 and you're a Dante Moore guy, you can end up with Dante Moore still and get extra capital.
Case in point, you look at last night's game between the 49ers and the Bears. You've got the number 1 overall draft pick versus Mr. Irrelevant.
Yeah.
Mr. Irrelevant goes for 5 touchdowns. And how do you quantify that when you're looking at a draft order?
Right.
How do you position that by saying, oh my gosh, well, if we take Mr. Relevant at quarterback, maybe he'll be another Brock Purdy. The philosophy doesn't work that way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a gamble. It's a risk. And it's a risk on any player. All the players are crapshoot. That's why I tell people all the time, I don't really pay attention to college guys until they come in the draft to show me they can do something on this level. Because you can have all the glamour and glitz. You could be part of a tremendously good team, get into the NFL and wet yourself. And what good are you to me then? Oh, yes, you won a national championship in college, but you can't get in the 3-point stance as an offensive lineman. What good are you to me? Those types of things have happened, and I've seen it. So, it depends on how your philosophy is. It always depends on who's going to be coach, because you can't even sort of predict in any realm that when Shanahan was the coach of the 49ers, he's going to take Mr. Irrelevant, and they're probably going to go get in the Super Bowl. They did.
Right.
Yeah. Matter of fact, they went when they had injured quarterbacks, so that goes back to coaching. There's so many intangibles involved, but I do know this. Bottom line, the Raiders need more than one player.
Yeah, no, Linc, you broke it down perfectly. I'm excited for the draft already because I don't know what they're going to do. So now I'm just like, what are they going to do with this?
Free agency first. See, that's the good thing about this, though. The good thing about this is there's going to be decisions made, obviously, right after the game on Sunday against the Chiefs, right? So we'll start to see what direction this team wants to go. And then you have free agency. So based off what they do in free agency with all that salary cap space, you'll get a good idea of what direction they are going in the draft by what they do or don't do in free agency. So I think that's another level of this game. Also, there's going to be made decisions on Geno Smith. Like, he might have just played his last game last night with the Raiders, right? He's got a high ankle sprain. I doubt he plays this week against the Chiefs, and I can't see him coming back next year. Did you see him get introduced? He got introduced to a crowd of boos.
That's crazy.
Ashton Jeanty comes up right after him. Geno Smith goes out there, boo. It's just I can't see a world where Geno Smith's back next year.
Yeah, and you know what? We're going to get to that on the other side. We're going to break down Geno's season, and that was a great setup. See, I barely have to do work around here, just saying. Raider Nation, so keep it locked here on the Locked On Network. You're watching or listening to the Raider Squad Show. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Whether you're starting a new routine or jumping into player projections for the first time, trying something new can feel like a challenge. But with Prize Picks, it always feels good to be right. With high-pressure football matchups every weekend and elite hoops action almost every night, the action never slows down. And Prize Picks lets you stay in control. Prize Picks is the daily fantasy app that makes watching sports even more exciting by letting you build lineups based on player projections. No drafts, no waiting, just pick more or less and play your way. And also, some great things about Prize Picks is they always have like these 40% payout boosts, these 30% payout boosts, and sometimes on Fridays you get a 40% payout boost. So they have all these promos for you as well to kind of bump up your winnings if you do end up winning. So download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. Welcome back, Raider Nation. Remember, if you like the content, please hit that like and subscribe button. You can also follow us on our social media channels, and we do appreciate you making Locked On Raiders your first listen of the day, and then the Squad Show your second listen of the day. The Locked On Network, the #1 sports podcasting network. So we appreciate all your support. You mentioned Geno Smith before the break, Q. You mentioned the boos when he got introduced. It's been a rough season for Geno, and yeah, he has a high ankle sprain. And as you know, a high ankle sprain, I've had one before. It's worse than a broken ankle because I've also had a broken ankle before. So it's very unlikely that he plays. Careful, yeah, I'm just saying.
That's
let someone else have the rock once in a while.
I'm just saying, But here's the thing. That's a serious injury. We're probably not going to see Geno. And Pete said that too in his presser. He just said that's going to be hard to come back from. I'm paraphrasing. But this is huge news now for Geno because, they brought him back after he was injured. They let Kenny Pickett start. That start against the Eagles did not go very well at all. you bring back Geno Smith and he gets hurt. And I think the biggest question is, Linc, do you think Geno even wants to come back next year?
No.
Okay. Sweet. Short and sweet there.
Short, sweet. I could say ditto, but Q hadn't said it yet.
No.
Look, I watch, as I've told you guys, I'm big on body language.
Yep.
I watched Geno as after that interception and he got hit, how long he stayed down on the ground. I know he was hurt, and I get that, but how long he stayed on the ground. And when he took off his helmet, I could see the frustration just steaming off his face. This is a competitor. And I've never doubted that for a second. I do believe that Geno Smith is a competitor, but it's always a gamble when you go out and take a free agent quarterback, no matter what their history has been. You're not going to be able to always turn the page like Sam Darnold has been able to do and that's the most recent exception. I mean, not exception. It's the most recent experience that comes to mind. But, when I look at Geno Smith, I would question why.
Right.
Yeah. Why should I go out there? Why should I? And even if I had such a demonstrative soul and say, you know what, I'm going to go out there and play the best damn game because I want the Raiders to win because I don't want them. If you want to be vindictive like that,
right.
I'm not saying it is. I'm not putting words. I'm just saying, and even if you had that mindset, because I always play on both sides. What are you going to get out of it? What's going to get at it? I think Geno had an opportunity to prove that he's capable of playing. I think Pete Carroll believed in him, stayed eternally loyal to him throughout the season, gave him every opportunity he was, and it just wasn't surrounded by good opportunities. I mean, and positive opportunities. Didn't have a good offensive line. I thought he was under constant duress. I thought that played in his mind throughout the season. I thought he got focused on Ashton Genty or Brock Bowers when he had those options. Didn't look at other people. When he got away from that, he did what he did yesterday. He stared down two receivers and threw two bad picks.
Yeah.
And that's a product of this season. And if I'm Geno Smith, if I have any desire to move forward with my career, this is what's going to hover over my head until I do something different. I don't know if going out against the Kansas City Chiefs in the final game of the season, which is, you're still jockeying for position of some sort, is even going to matter. So I question why.
Yeah, I don't see a world where Geno wants to come back. I really don't see a world how he can come back. I just think that this is a bad relationship. Geno and the Raiders. It just didn't go the way that anyone expected when they traded for him and thought that they knew what they were getting. And it's funny, they should have, and we all should have known what the Raiders were getting in him. You go back and look at what he did last year in Seattle. He had 20 touchdown passes to 15 interceptions. And I remember so many times talking about that and saying, okay, well, Geno with the Raiders has to be much closer to 30 touchdowns and under 10 interceptions, right? Let's spread this out a little bit. 20 and 15 is not a good number for a starting quarterback in the National Football League. Well, this year he has 21 touchdowns and 17 interceptions. So it's very much similar to what he did in Seattle. And what did they say about the biggest issue he had in Seattle last year? Well, he didn't have an offensive line, so he tried to do too much on his own. Well, guess what? With the Raiders, didn't have much of an offensive line, tried to do too much on his own, threw a bunch of picks. So it just is not a good recipe. It was not a good marriage. It wasn't what was supposed to be for him getting the opportunity to lead his team, not Russell Wilson's team, but his team. It just didn't work out. So I think for both parties, it would just make all the sense in the world to be a split.
Yeah, and with Geno possibly not playing next game due to that high ankle sprain, the question becomes, do the Raiders go with Kenny Pickett or Aidan O'Connell? And I'm only asking that question because we saw Kenny Pickett, and I think Linc said after that game against Philly, Linc, you were like, he deserves another shot under center. But there is a possibility they could give a shot to Aidan O'Connell. If you had to make the choice today, would you give Kenny Pickett the last game against the Chiefs, or would you maybe try to give Aidan O'Connell a shot, Linc?
Aidan O'Connell. Short and sweet.
What's your reasoning for that?
Well, here's the thing, because I think Kenny Pickett, with his resume throughout the league, has shown that if there's a scout or a coach who thinks he might be able to draw something out of Kenny and maybe possibly get him to the team, then you have the ability for him to move on. But with Aidan O'Connell still being under contract, am I right?
Yeah,
he's still
another
under contract.
Year. Yep.
You still have the trade value. Possibly, if you want to deal Aidan O'Connell to some team that says they're deserving, and you might, because I said we're still trying to compile draft choices. We're trying to get picks. We're trying to get some sort of equity for our current players. And without Aidan O'Connell playing really in this regular season, he hasn't put on film anything.
Yeah.
So his value is drastically decreased. And the thing is that what you're getting in Kenny Pickett. Like, he's been a journeyman around the league. Maybe he'll find a home somewhere else. You don't have to secure your bid for him to stay with him unless you absolutely want him to have behind your future quarterback as a backup. But I say put Aidan O'Connell on film.
I wouldn't have any problem if they did both. If they had both of those guys out there and got some reps for them. I mean, I don't know how they would divvy it up. You know, Aiden's been the emergency quarterback the last couple of weeks, which is, again, told me kind of what they feel about, at least this staff, what they feel about Aidan O'Connell. Whether that's correct or not, you know, it just seems like that he's not a guy that they're, you know, that they really like what he brings to the table. Let's put it like that. He just hasn't seemed to be that guy since they arrived. They just never seemed like a good fit either. So I don't know if they would put him in there. I wouldn't have any problem if both those guys, you know, played. Aidan to maybe drum up some interest in a trade. It would probably be good to have him out there. But who knows, right? I mean, Kenny Pickett's, his contract is out as soon as this year is over. It's gonna, you know, his contract runs out. So I mean, the future with the Raiders doesn't look like it's there anyway. So maybe Aidan O'Connell makes the most sense. Maybe I don't know. Maybe you're thinking about Kenny Pickett to be a bridge guy. I don't know. Just put one of the two dudes out there, throw them both out there, do whatever you got to do, right? Just get through the game as healthy as possible.
I've watched Aidan O'Connell when he was at Purdue, and I've seen certain times where he's looked promising. I still think he's a NFL caliber capable quarterback, but I have to back that up by quantifying by saying he hasn't been protected well his entire career. And he's not very mobile. So, you know, when you think about it, what you have to do, what you have to solidify, you have to create almost like a Matthew Stafford type of situation with the Rams. I'm using the Rams because they're probably the most, or you go Detroit when they had their heyday with their offensive line, but you got to put an offensive line around him. You got to protect him, allow him to do his thing in the pocket. He's not going to extend the pocket. He's not going to extend plays, and he's got to have a good enough system to where he can go capably through his reads and his progression and make the right choice. And we haven't seen that because we haven't seen a consistency out front. And I go back to the basic core, guys. I can't grade a quarterback if you don't have an offensive line. Yep. I can't tip my hat to, well, you had less interceptions this time than you did. You have no offensive line,
right?
You know, so you have limited amount of plays and what you can do, and you have a system that's maybe not conducive to your skill set. These are all intangibles that have to fall in line. I just think there's a higher ceiling for me right now, practically, from Aidan O'Connell.
Yeah, and the other thing about Aidan, though, is he can't, you know, like you said, he's not a mobile guy. I mean, he's a guy that is pretty much a statue. He'll try to, you know, get out of the pocket and get out, you know, out of harm's way. But a lot of times you see him come up hurt after that, right? I mean, it's just it's a lot of work for him to run out of the pocket. And behind this offensive line, that might be setting him up for big time failure. So maybe it makes the most sense to just have Kenny Pickett out there, at least give him a chance to escape the pass rush if it gets there.
Yeah, I wouldn't be mad if they played both of them, like Kenny in the first half, Aidan in the second half, whatever, you know, they want to do. But here's another question for you, because when Geno threw that first pick, I wasn't mad for the first time of the season because I'm like, he's helping the chances of this number one overall pick. I did make money. Okay, so there was two reasons. Okay, I made some bread, and then also I'm like, oh, he's helping the chances for us to get the number one overall pick. So we should be thanking Geno. But someone had tweeted at me. His name's Vic, and he said, "Don't laugh now because next year he could be with the Raiders still." And so if Pete stays, and listen, there was a color commentator, I forget who was doing the game, but he said that he could see Pete Carroll staying with the Raiders next season. And we don't know if that's a thing. We don't know what's going to happen. Pete said he had a great relationship with upper management in the post-game presser. But if Pete was to stay, Geno, you know, there's a lot of money tied to him with this. Do you think there's a possibility where Geno comes back, but maybe in a backup role? Either of you can take this.
I don't think that's in his DNA. I don't think that's the role that he wants, right, Linc? I mean, he gets traded for to be the starting quarterback. All of a sudden he goes in there. I don't even think he's a mentor role, to be honest with you. And this is not because he said that, so I don't want anyone to take it the wrong way and go out and write an article about it and say, Q Myers said this on the Raider Squad show. Geno doesn't have – no, because there's that website doing it right now, I promise you. They won't put their name on it. But no, there is. I promise you. It's coming out. The article's on its way. Trust me. So that's how it is. But, I don't know if that's who he is, to be honest. I just don't. I think that he wants to be the starting quarterback. He feels very strongly about being the starting quarterback and that he is that guy in the National Football League. Look, this is a guy that's gone through a bunch of trials and tribulations since he's been drafted, right? And so it's one of those situations. I don't see him wanting to play that type of role where he's either the backup guy or he's the mentor, he's the bridge to a younger quarterback. I think that he wants an opportunity to be the guy somewhere. Honestly, I don't know where that would be this year after what we saw, or next year after what we saw this year.
You know, I go back to yesterday's game and I went back to my hotel room and played it over on film watching it, and that first pick reminded me of the Los Angeles Charger game. That first pick that he threw in the Charger game. That safety was sitting right there on that skinny post. That linebacker was right there. I don't know how you can anticipate that skinny post is going to come open with the inside angle the receiver has over the cornerback and not see that linebacker. That to me was a bad pick. I say that to say this. From what I've seen and what I've heard, and I don't know Geno, I haven't had a chance to talk to him really. From what I've seen and what I heard, I don't think he's relegated to a backup role with this team. Yeah. If it's anything, he looks for an opportunity somewhere else, but not with this team. I don't think that's in it. Like you said, I don't think that's in his DNA. More importantly, I don't think he wants the flack that if he is a backup guy to the future, the franchise quarterback to this team, and he has to come in and serve a game, nobody wants to come in on the football field and booze.
It's true. It's true.
No, yeah, that's for sure. I think the relationship is not the best with Geno Smith and Raider Nation. Yeah. Also, just right now in terms of, what he's gone through this season. And we knew that he was injured like throughout the entire season. So now, he kind of ends off. That may have been the last time we saw Geno Smith wearing the silver and black. But coming up on the other side, someone that's extremely loyal to the silver and black, Maxx Crosby. He was placed on the IR. We're going to get into all of that on the other side. So keep it locked here on the Locked On Network. You're watching or listening to the Raider Squad Show. Let's be real. No one starts a business for the joy of calculating tax, withholdings, or managing payroll spreadsheets. That's where Gusto comes in to take the stress out of payroll, benefits, and HR so you can focus on running your business and supporting your team. Gusto is the all-in-one remote-friendly payroll and HR platform that makes managing your team simple, transparent, and fast. Whether you're hiring on board or paying employees, Gusto helps you do it all from one place without the hassle or hidden fees. And knowing you can reach certified HR experts anytime gives you real peace of mind. Try Gusto today at gusto.com/lockedonnfl and get 3 months free when you run your first payroll. That's right, 3 months of free payroll at gusto.com/lockedonnfl. One more time, that's gusto.com/lockedonnfl. Welcome back, Raider Nation. If you like the content, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Also, remember, we're still doing a final segment where Linc Q will be taking some of your questions and comments. So if you're in the chat on YouTube, get them in right now. Okay, so both of you guys are going to be answering some questions there, I guess.
It's Shantelle. Thanks.
I know that's your favorite segment, but you know what I'm saying? But I really want to get to this Maxx Crosby conversation because, there was so much talk about whether or not they would sit out Maxx Crosby for the rest of the season. We got our answer this past weekend. It started off by them saying and putting out a statement that Maxx would not be participating in this game against the Giants. And Maxx didn't like that, obviously. And there were reports that came out from a few NFL reporters that said that he had left the building. I believe Ian Rappaport was one of them, that Maxx did not like that decision. And then later on the next day, we get a official announcement from the Raiders, and I'll just read it. It says, "We have made the decision to place Maxx Crosby on the reserve injured list for the remainder of the 2025 season. After deliberate and thorough consultation with multiple top medical professionals, it became clear that this decision is in the best interest of both the franchise and the player. Maxx is the ultimate warrior, and he has fought extremely hard to complete each week with his teammates since injuring his knee mid-season. We are grateful for his extraordinary contributions. He is a true Raider on and off the field, and we look forward to his leadership and toughness into 2026 and beyond." So obviously we know how Maxx is one of the most passionate football players on planet Earth, period, right now. Linc, what were your thoughts on this? And do you think it was the right move by the Raiders?
Yes. And the reason why I think it's the right move is because you're taking a risk not only on right now but your future. And the thing is that we were all athletes. Okay, so I'm putting this collectively to the table here. If we had a healthy scratch, if a coach, person over the top of us in any position, any time of our lives came and said, "Shantelle, Q, Linc, you're not playing today. We're just going to rest you. You know what? I noticed a little gimp in your step. There might be something wrong with you. I'm just going to shut you down." If I felt that I was a healthy scratch, I wouldn't go to the game either. I wouldn't show up in the stadium. People might say you're acting childish. People might say you're acting immature. So be it. I am a selfish ass athlete. and I want to play. I want to be out there on the football field. That's not my particular field. And for your sports, I'm probably thinking you're collectively the same. Don't sit me down.
Right.
Come to me and have the conversation. Try to make sense of it to me why you should sit me down. If I don't agree with it, look, if you want to limit my plays, well, that's another thing. Because if you limit my plays to say we're only going to have you play 10 plays, but within those 10 plays, you run the risk of injuring you more severely, and you're part of our future.
Right.
So I get both sides, and I understood why Pete Carroll did it. We talked about it the week before it. I mean, the day the podcast before it happened.
Yeah.
We talked about it, and I could see it going both ways with the organization as well as the athlete. But I was not surprised that he wasn't at the stadium yesterday. And I told JT when we were talking about it, I want to come. I assumed that he was already getting ready for surgery. I didn't think he was on his home court playing with his daughter, and that came out on social media last night. But to each his own. If I'm ever a healthy scratch and you tell me that I can't play, and I think that I can play, or I want to go out, don't expect me to be as supportive, as accountable, and you can call it what you want. That's just the way I think most athletes think. What are your thoughts?
I agree 100%. I could definitely see both ways and both sides of the conversation. We did have discussions about it, and I remember saying, they're probably trying to limit him in the game, and how are you going to limit him because he wants to play every snap, right? Not to mention we had just talked to him in the locker room earlier in the week, and a lot of the conversation came up about the number 1 overall pick, and he said he didn't give a blank about that pick. Right. And he's like, that's not my business. I'm worried about being the best, leader I can on this team, the best edge rusher, right? The best version of me. I'm not, that's for those guys to worry about. So they made the decision. Look, this guy's been on the injury report. He's legitimately been on the injury report every week since week 5, and 12 out of 16 practices, DNP, did not participate because of the knee injury. And then he goes out and plays because that's who he is. And I get it. Look, I want to play. I don't like missing shows. Right, we had a couple days off last week because because of the holidays. We didn't have radio shows. I'm sitting around the house like, now what? Now I'm up here angry. The wife's like, you want to go to the movie? I was like, hell no, I want to do my show. Right? But that's what it is. Because we all get wired in a certain way where we want to do what we do best or feel like we do best, and we want to do it all the time. And anytime we get an opportunity, so I get it, and I get it from Max's point of view, 100%. I was actually one of the few that never expected him to be at the game. I never expected him to be at the game on Sunday. I know a lot of people were like, oh, Brock was there, Max should have been there. I don't think so. How much camera time would have been spent on Maxx Crosby on the sideline?
Countless.
The whole game, you would have seen the camera on Max, what his reaction was to everything. If the touchdown was scored on the Raiders, goes straight to Max. And then, of course, like you said, the video came out about him, on the trampoline or playing basketball. And so then is he doing wind sprints up and down the sideline? Everything's going to be monitoring what Maxx Crosby is doing. Is he walking back and forth? Does he look fine? Is he jumping up and down? Is he doing jumping jacks? Right? Is he going to try to keep showing that, hey, man, I should be out there playing? Because, of course, he is banged up, but he still feels like I can go. So I get both sides of the story, but the dude is too valuable for this team. There was plenty of injuries. You go across the league yesterday, plenty of injuries that are going to go not only affect the end of the season for these players, but also affect their 2026, like Patrick Mahomes, for example, right? He's probably not going to start the season for the Chiefs, and how valuable is he? So if the Raiders, could you imagine this? If Max went out there and played in that game yesterday, and heaven forbid something happens, what the conversation would be like? Why the hell do the Raiders have that guy out there in a game that doesn't mean anything? Right? So we would have heard all the conversation from the other side. So I definitely get both parts of this.
I was reminded of the play back in the Kansas City game where Max got injured. I was reminded of the trap by the tight end. And I saw
on his kneecap.
Right on the kneecap. Yep. And I saw how he won, even on the sidelines of that game, how he was trying so desperately to get back out there on the football field. And you can see that he was hobbled. Obviously, the injury was fresh at that point, but you can see how he struggled through it. Much to Q's point, he played remainder of the season on pretty much injury report every weekend, every week, and he was there, but he still balled. I'm not saying that he didn't,
right,
and he's not capable of it. But as far as protecting the future, there's absolutely no reason to have him in yesterday's game. Absolutely no reason. There's no good that could possibly come out of it other than him padding his stats. But he is the Raiders' future. He is the Raiders' front man. If he goes out there and they do that same trap on his kneecap again, and he's out for the remainder, not only this year, but most of next year, what good was that? Now you got your highest paid player sitting on the sideline watching with a knee sleeve on, or sitting at home watching with a knee sleeve on. It didn't make sense. So I understood both sides.
Do you think it may have fractured the relationship, though? Because Max posting those videos on IG was more so him saying, hey, I'm good to go. I'm jumping around here with my daughter. I'm shooting hoops. Like, do you think there is any truth to the relationship being a little bit, not as smooth as it was before, Q?
I mean, I think he's upset, right? And so, you do what you do when you're upset. Look, I was wondering about that as well. So on Friday, I asked Pete, is this hurting the relationship? Because again, he did leave the facility. It wasn't like he left the facility and the team was like, no, Max, don't leave. Pete Carroll said that he was upset as well and said, yeah, I thought it was good for him to leave. He wanted to blow off some steam. He wanted to get out of here because he obviously reacted like we all knew he was going to react. He was upset by it. I agreed with him leaving. Pete also said last night after the game, no, he wasn't at the game, but he'll be at the facility today. So when we talked to him at 11 o'clock this morning, of course, we'll ask about that conversation. How did the conversation go with Max? Where's the relationship at right now? We haven't heard from Max. All we've seen is the social media posts. Maybe he'll go on his podcast and say where the relationship's at. Pete Carroll told me specifically when I asked him on Friday, he said there's nothing wrong with the relationship. Now, that could mean multiple different things. It might not matter, the relationship with Pete Carroll, because he might not be here after next week, right? We don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. And, so Max might be angry at him, and then all of a sudden Pete's not around, then maybe Max isn't mad anymore. I mean, who knows? Like, there's so much that can still happen between now and then is why I don't take a whole lot of it. I don't get too worked up about it right now. Now we'll see what happens once the offseason hits, though, and then we'll start to get some answers.
To me, Max is a competitor. I don't think this, makes him flush in any way. He's mad about not playing, obviously, but he's also going through so many changes within this organization and all personal and everything else. I think he has so many things to be grateful of and so many things to be proud of himself for what he achieved. He's a tremendous guy, a tremendous person, and in and out. And on a side note, I just don't get today's current athlete. I don't understand why everybody has to post all their welfare on social media. Right. My son did it when he had his injury. I'm like, why are you telling everybody about your ankle injury? Well, you're not. Is this part of fantasy? Is that what you guys do? I don't get this generation, guys. You guys are more on social media than I am. I just don't understand.
I don't like it.
Why everybody has to everybody has to post everything they're doing. Well, I went to the bathroom today. Everything came out all right. Who cares? I mean, anyway, that's just me. Side note. Sorry, sidebar.
Okay, but I'll just say this. I'm in total agreement with both of you. Also, it just takes me back, and this is more of like a basketball thing that happened, but Tom Thibodeau left Derrick Rose out in the 2012 playoffs against Philly in game 1. The Bulls were up by 12 points. I think there was like a minute 22 left, and Derrick Rose tore his ACL. He was never the same after that, and he should have been taken out of the game. And then Tibbs, he just got killed. And he still does now to this day, where they're like, why did he let D Rose stay in that game? So I think them sitting Max was probably the best thing that they could have done, because he would have never wanted to sit out himself. But coming up on the other side, Linc Q are going to be taking some of your questions and comments. So if you got a good question, drop it in the chat right now. We're going to take a quick break and be back, and that's on the other side. So keep it locked here on the Locked On Network. You're watching or listening to the Raiders Squad Show. All right, Raider Nation, I love a quick break, right? That one was quick.
There you go.
If you like the content, hit that like and subscribe button. We're going to get to a couple of questions and comments. This one coming from a good friend of the show, Pig76. He says, I'd rather trade Besh than at either than Michael Mayer at tight end. That's what he's trying to say, because they were talking about the trade. So he's saying he rather trade Besh than Michael Mayer. Would you guys be interested in that? Do you think there's enough on Besh where there's value to trade him?
No, not at all. Not at all. I'm glad that they brought up Besh, though. I felt really bad that he was inactive. His whole family from Louisiana is in town right now. His whole family. And I saw them on Friday night, got to meet and talk to a lot of them. They're fantastic people. And they were so excited to, see their son or grandson, whatever the case may be, brother or sister, whatever, just go out there and play. And when he was inactive, so I saw him after the game and he was leaving the locker room, and I was like, man, did you know you're going to be inactive? He's like, he found out on Saturday. Apparently he's been dealing with some back spasms, and so they decided to keep him out, but felt so bad for him because, again, he's trying to get this opportunity to go out there and play and show what he can do and be part of this team, the solution, again, trying to, build on what he's done. And he hasn't had a lot of runs so far this year, but starting to see him get a little bit more lathered up. So to see him being active on Sunday, a little bit disappointing, I know, for him and more importantly, his family.
Short and sweet. If this administration traded Besh, they would show they don't have confidence in the scouting department.
Mm-hmm.
That's just what it comes down to. I know they need more players, but you just have a one-year player who's shown some promise at times, and of course is injured. You can't play. That's what it comes down to. But if you were to trade him, you would show that you have no confidence in your scouting department.
He also mentioned he'd rather Besh at tight end over Mayer. What would you think about Jack Besh playing tight end?
No, I don't. I
He's not
think
big enough.
he's a wide receiver. He's a
Yeah.
good number 2 wide receiver, and I think he just has to continue to build into that role, and he hasn't quite done it yet, just because he hasn't been out there enough.
There's a fine line between possession receiver and tight end. He's not big enough for tight end.
All right, let's go over to Howard Q5. I love how people say be patient, but it's been 20 plus years. How much longer? At least be honest with the fans on what's next. Do you think that the Raider Nation kind of got the short end of the stick? Because coming into the season, it was the Raiders might possibly make the playoffs. Do you think that it was just judged wrong with the talent and personnel that they had on this team? Either of you can take this.
I never said they make the playoffs.
No, I didn't think I didn't think they were going to be a playoff team either. I was assuming they were going to get around 8 wins, which obviously that was a wrong assumption as well, since they're sitting there at 2 wins. The thing about it is, and Raider Nation does get the short end of the stick, and I say this all the time. The coaching staff changes, players change, GMs change, front office changes. What doesn't change? Raider Nation. So we always say be patient, because every staff is going to have to take multiple years to get this team where it needs to be. But every time you press reset, going back to Linc's point, then all of a sudden you're kicking the can down the road a little bit longer. Well, guess what? The ones that get kicked the most are the fan base, because the fans are still there, right? The fans that were there in Oakland, the fans that were there in LA are the fans that are here in Vegas, right? I mean, that's what it is. But the players aren't, the coaches aren't. And so it just keeps kicking. It's a sore spot. It keeps kicking the Raider Nation in their side, because, as he said, it's been more than 20 years, but it hasn't been more than 20 years for anyone in that building, right? As far as front office goes, as far as players goes, as far as coaches goes, right? There's a couple equipment guys and a couple guys that have been with the organization for a long time, but what player's been there 20 years? None. What front office guy's been there 20 years, right? Maybe MT, and he's not front office, but you know what I mean? Like Mike Taylor's been there.
Exactly, yeah.
Right. So that's
no doubt.
It's hard for the fan base. It really is.
Yeah. Well, coming up on the next episode, which we're going to let you know, Raider Nation, if it is going to be on Thursday morning, which would be New Year's Day, which is also full of bowl games.
Oh boy, that's gonna be tough.
Yeah, I know. We're gonna let you know. We'll let you know, though. Well, I don't know. We'll let you know. But nonetheless, we do appreciate you.
Have to kick that to Friday. I'm just gonna go ahead. I'm gonna take the lead on this one, because I know what my Wednesday night is supposed to take care of and be a part of. I might not be too good on Thursday morning.
Okay, and
you might not want to hear what I say Thursday morning, so I definitely think
okay, so
I'm gonna tip a few back.
Yeah, I'm just saying. I can appreciate a good New Year's celebration. That's all.
All right, yeah, I think Raider Nation deserves that. You and Linc deserve that. So Raider Nation, you heard it here first. We'll be back on Friday. We're gonna be breaking down the final game of the season with the Raiders and the Chiefs. So thanks so much for rocking out with us this Monday morning. Thank you so much for hitting that like and subscribe button. And Happy New Year. And we'll see you in the new year on Friday.